Hey guys, today I'm going to show you my own chart in hopes that it helps you when looking at your own chart. So it's Penelope in London, and this is my own chart that I've got on the screen. And the reason I'm sharing it is that I don't really talk about my own chart on this channel. And the work I do on this channel is primarily about the collective sky, the full moon, the new moon, and lately I've done a Pisces lunar eclipse that's coming up, which you can go back to. That was my last video. And the larger movements of the planets and what they're saying about the moment that we're all living through and together. So that's what I've been doing. But I've been working with my own natal chart and in some depth recently. And I've been looking at it for many years, since 2015. And it's 11 years I've been at this, and you continue to learn and keep moving forward. It's like you never get to a stop place in astrology. You just keep learning because things keep changing and aspects keep changing. So I'm starting with the solar fire chart, and then I will move to astro.com chart so that you'll be able to access your own, and by putting in your time, date, and place of birth. And then you may, from what I'm showing you, pick up some really useful tips on your own chart, helping you to read it better. And it's my chart isn't unusual. We've all got one, and it's just that the configurations it illustrates, some of them are very significant for my own evolution, and each of us has that within our chart. So your own chart, you may be able to see it more clearly once you've watched this video. And as I do it, I'm going to read it with honesty. It's with not performing anything. And we've all got difficulty and we've got gifts within our charts as well. So I'm going to go through mine and you'll be able to see more. But also, before I go any further, if anything I share resonates with you, you can book me. And in the description, you'll see my booking page. And I work individually. And also, if you like this video, then hit the like button because I'm growing my channel. So the foundation of the chart, you can see at the moment that I've just pulled this up, and at the moment you can see 18 degrees. The moon is 18 degrees of Sagittarius. But now what I'm going to do, and actually before I do this, so it's 27 degrees Scorpio rising. The moon is currently, this is my chart. The inner wheel is that's my natal placements, and the outer wheel are the current transits on my chart, which tells me what I'm working with currently. And you can see the moon is in Sagittarius for all of us, but mine is in the first house on my part of fortune. And then there's Lilith here as well. And we've got Pluto retrograde currently at 3 degrees of Aquarius. We got the North Node 29 degrees of Aquarius. So you can see, every chart is going to be different. Your planets are going to fall in different places. You're going to have a different inner will to the one that I have, and be due to your rising signs. So all of the planets hit differently. And it can be very confusing if we don't know what we're looking at. And it took me years to learn. So hopefully I can give you a bit of useful knowledge here. We can see that currently, so the outer wheel is the collective chart. You can see that the sun and the moon, sorry, the sun and the north node are about to meet. The sun is going to cross over the north node, but this is not about that today. I'll do another chart on the collective chart, and now I'm going to show you my chart from astro.com. And you should be able to get a copy of this if you go to astro.com or AstroSeek. It's astro-seek, and you'll be able to see your own chart. So this is what you will get on astro.com. So if you look at the foundation of my chart, you see I've got 27 degrees Scorpio rising, and then I've got Saturn conjunct Chiron in Pisces in the fourth house. So you can see the houses 1, 2, 3, all the way around to house 12. And you can see that over here I've got an IC of 20 degrees of Pisces, and then I've got Chiron conjunct Saturn. And that's quite a signature for people born in the period of time in 1966. A lot of people have this conjunction. And also these are the outer planets. So you can see also that here, the Pluto-Uranian conjunction, which was in Virgo, and that was in the 60s as well. So the IC is the very root of the chart, okay? It's the root, and in evolutionary astrology, the fourth house, the IC is the very root. It's where everything else originates. It's the foundation of the chart. The fourth house is the private interior world. It's the earliest experiences in our home and wherever we grew up, and what it provided or failed to provide. So you want to look what's in your fourth house if there are any planets there. And in my chart, the fourth house holds Saturn at 27 degrees of Pisces here. And then it also holds Chiron at 25 degrees of Pisces. So this is what we would call a conjunction, and they're close together. In evolutionary astrology, I think we allow up to 8 degrees, but don't quote me on that, but I would say 5. So whilst I talk about evolutionary astrology, I very much am not following any particular system. I sort of got very intuitive in my approach and how I see things. And I look at astrology not so much as a predictive tool, but more as an understanding of my soul journey and myself, my heart, my desires, and the things I struggle with to understand myself. So it's more of a know thyself situation. That's how I work with charts. Now, Saturn conjunct Chiron in the fourth house is a significant configuration for understanding the foundational wound, the wound in a chart. Saturn is the planet of structure, of the father principle of what's provided or fails to provide. And it's also the solid ground that a child needs in order to build a self. And Chiron is the wounded healer. I would say that Simon Vorster, if you come across him on Raising Vibrations, he talks about Chiron, and actually the Chiron as it moves through the chart. If you can see, the Chiron is currently here in my fifth house. This is the current transit, and Chiron takes about 50 years around the chart. So when I was 51, Chiron was conjunct my Chiron. So it's a slow moving event, the Chiron. And he suggests looking at Chiron as it transits. It's a revitalization, so from the wound rather than being stuck in the wound. And I really like his theory on that. So Chiron, the wounded healer, the place where something was broken, broken apart and that could not simply be fixed. And that is the whole mythology of Chiron. But in that, the breaking of whatever was broken, it also created the capacity for a particular kind of wisdom. So we've each got wisdom through our wounding that we've had. And it's not very nice that we get wounded, but this is part of the human condition. People wound other people and events wound us, and we have losses and betrayal and all sorts of things that go on. But it's a particular kind of healing work when we're working with Chiron, because we can't, it's not that we're controlling anything, because we have to gain the wisdom in order to understand ourselves. So together, that Saturn conjunct Chiron in Pisces there in the fourth house, in Pisces, it's boundaryless. There's no boundaries, and the unconscious, this is the sign of dissolution. And in the fourth house of the earliest home, this conjunction speaks of a foundation that was not solid because it's in Pisces, in the Saturn sense, it wasn't solid. And the emotional atmosphere of the earliest environment was permeable. So it meant that whatever was going on, it's like it went right through me. It was very challenging. And boundaries were very unclear and unsafe, or simply absent. And what should have been provided in structure was dissolved instead. So there was no structure. As an example, I was put in children's homes when I was young, and I wasn't safe in the family home by any means at all. So in Pisces, Saturn's natural tendency toward form and boundary is softened. That's the problem. We've just come out of a Saturn in Pisces, because if you look, Saturn is currently in the sign of Aries, and it would have been, earlier this year, it would have been in Pisces. So that it's in Pisces every about 28, 29 years. it moves into each sign. It's just under 30 years. I'll just give you a marker for that to make it easy to understand. It's around 30 years around the chart, and Chiron is around 50 years around the chart. So when you're looking at your own chart, you can begin to sort of, if you print off your own chart and come back to this video, if you haven't got your own chart in front of you, so you can look, where is Saturn in your chart? Where is Chiron in your chart? What sign is something in? All of these things matter. And then later we will come to the inside of the chart, which is we see are the trines and the squares and all of the other things that are going on. So basically, in my view, it would be like, for instance, that I can't speak Arabic, and if I was going to read Arabic, I would need to sit down and learn the language and symbols as well. So what you're looking at when you look at your own chart is it's a process of learning what is softened, as I mentioned, and sometimes undermined by the Neptunian quality of the sign. And the father principle here, which in my opinion, or not my opinion, but whether that is the literal father, it could be the literal father or the broader structural support of the fourth house represents. It could also be, like for instance, being in care, that's some sort of governmental mothering, fathering system that goes on. So we can really begin to read into these things. So in the fourth house represents whatever was experienced through a Piscean lens of confusion. There was a lot of confusion, of longing for something that felt more clearly present, and there wasn't any presence. It was almost like was lost. I've definitely felt lost as a child. And Chiron sitting right alongside Saturn means that the wound is not simply a biographical fact, but a vocational one. It is the wound that eventually, through a great deal of interior work, becomes the source of what I have to offer others, and which it has, because part of my work is astrology, part is hypnosis, part of it is currently in the process of writing a book to help people who've been through CSA abuse, which is child sexual abuse. I'm helping with a guide to help people, to remove some of the suffering that can be quite repetitive, and in my own wisdom and knowledge, how I can help people to evolve, whether we really evolve it, but definitely that there are things that we can get stuck on, and hopefully as a lens through my own life, it will help people to have aha moments for their own and remove some of the suffering. That would be my ideal. So it is the wound through a great deal of work becomes the source of what I have to offer. So that's the Chiron as well. It's like the teacher as well, coming through here, the one that has wisdom. And many of us have wisdom. I'm not alone in this. I'm just giving you the view of my chart. So the foundation, everything else in the chart from the fourth house, Pisces is the root for me here. That's my fourth house. So your fourth house is going to be the root. And then I've also got a configuration I'm about to describe. It's called a yod, which is called the finger of God, which people do have in their charts. And it's not an egocentric sort of thing like I've got a finger of God. It's just a configuration, which I will explain. And then Algol also I've got on which you can't see here, but Algol is in a fixed star about 26 degrees of Taurus. So that's on my north node. So Algol I will mention as well. And then I've got the descendant is also opposite the Neptune in the 12th house. You can see up here, I've got Neptune on the south node. And all of them are built on the ground of the Piscean foundation of the wound. And I say this not to invite, sort of like, sadness. I don't do it for that, but because understanding the root changes how we understand the tree. So if we look at people that we know and we don't really understand them, if we understood the root that they came from, we may have a whole different meaning of life, or even our own lives. So if we just focus on ourselves here, because I'm not suggesting we need to understand everybody else, not everyone. Clearly there's 8 billion of us, but if people have been harmful to us, it's not particularly that we need to, figure out and understand them. We can spend time doing that, but often it's pretty fruitless, I've come to realize. So the ascendant and the descendant are the axis here. So the ascendant, which is the beginning of the chart, and the descendant here, I've got Scorpio ascendant and a Taurus descendant, 27 degrees. And this is my outward face. So the Scorpio is my outward face and the energy I lead in the world, the quality that others meet first before they know me. So Scorpio rising is the presentation, it's the depth. People don't particularly see that at first. I might show more of my Taurus side, particularly because I've got that North Node there. But I think in my younger years, that would have been, if anybody was talking to me as a child, which they didn't, they would have seen a lot of that Scorpio there and in the wound. And so the Scorpio rising representation that we grow into, its intensity of a person who does not stay on the surface of anything. So that's something. I don't stay on the surface of anything anymore particularly. I'm not afraid to speak and go into the depth of speaking up about things that possibly would appear to be taboo. As I've just mentioned, part of my childhood there. It is the sign that knows instinctively what lies beneath the conversation, beneath the social arrangement, beneath the polite agreement. And Scorpio rising, if you have it, does not miss much. And so the archetype is the eye of the eagle. I'm not saying that is the archetype, but the eye of the eagle, that eagle can zoom on in. And if you think of the scorpion as well, the mother carries the babies on her back. I don't know if all of the scorpions do that, but I've seen pictures where the little scorpions are on the back of the mother and she has her tail, so she could swipe anybody that goes for those little babies that she's carrying on her back until they're able to fend for themselves. So Scorpio doesn't miss much, and it can read the room at a level that can be disconcerting for those who would prefer their surface to remain undisturbed. So I put that down to coming through a traumatic childhood, like the hypervigilance. So people can have this. People can have trauma without being Scorpio rising. I'm not suggesting it's just that. But when we've had that, we can become very hypervigilant and we can see and read things. Sometimes we read them wrong. I've noticed where I have fears that come from my past and I read people, maybe feeling fearful, am I safe? That question, I can read people wrong. But if I allow myself to sort of push against my fear, still keeping myself safe, I can learn that people are not, what as scary as I think they might be. So at 27 degrees, my ascendant sits very close to the Sagittarian threshold here. You can see literally, because then my ascendant, it's Scorpio, but then it falls into Sagittarius. And then my first house also contains, with the type of chart I'm using, it's porphyry up here, which is suggested by evolutionary astrology, Jeff Wolf Green. And then you can see that also, actually this chart is the 1st of August and today is the 21st. The first chart I showed you was the 21st, but here we can see that we've got the Capricorn then as well. So there's an interception going on here. That's what that means when you have the house 30 degrees and then you've got either side. You can see I've got a second house intercepted as well. In fact, looking at my chart, all of my houses are intercepted. If I used whole house, then it wouldn't look that way, but I prefer this system myself. And then we have the Taurus is directly opposite of 27 degrees Taurus here, the descendant, and on the 7th house cusp, because then it goes into the relationship world up here. And the point of the other of relationship is the point, what is the point of other, or what I encounter through genuine one-to-one connection. And clustered around the descendant in Taurus, it's a very, it's an interesting configuration in my chart. Mercury here. We're all interesting, by the way, so I'm talking about myself right now, but we've all got interesting stuff going on. So we've got, I would say, I've got the 23 degrees Mercury here. Can you see 23 degrees Mercury? And then I've got Mars at 24 degrees of Taurus, not Mercury. I've got Mercury at 23 degrees of Taurus, 24 degrees is Mars, and then I've got my North Node at 25 degrees, and then Algol is here. You can also see that Jung is up here as well, sort of falling 29 degrees of Taurus for me up there. I like to use that asteroid as well, Carl Gustav Jung. It delights me. So then the North Node and then Algol I've mentioned sitting at 26 degrees, 4 points gathered within 4 degrees of my descendant. So, they're tipping in there almost. And then you see I've got a 0 degree sun at Gemini, 0 degree 17. So I have in other videos spoken about Algol, and I think I mentioned her in the new moon in Taurus, but I'd have to recall if I did. But Algol, Mercury, Mars, and the North Node and the descendant cluster, and then Algol. And the new moon in Taurus, I believe I did. So it marks the eye of Medusa. It's mythology. It's the most ancient symbol of the demonized feminine power. And in traditional astrology, she is considered deeply malefic. And also in the depth of psychological tradition, she is the power that the patriarchal order needed to sever. They needed to get rid of her and then carry as a weapon. The creative force born from the wound, the truth that keeps generating power even after it is officially, being sort of written off or killed off. So to have Algol conjunct the North Node, which other people have as well, you can look at your chart. In my chart, and it's a fixed star, so it doesn't move. So if you've got anything at 26 degrees, but you might have aspects to Algol as well at 26 degrees of Taurus. And Algol conjunct the North Node in my chart is to have the soul's evolutionary direction woven together within that archetype, the growth I'm here for, the becoming, the direction the soul is moving toward and across in this lifetime. And it's in Algol territory, and the reclamation of what was severed, because she head, the Gorgon where you see a head being held up as to frighten people because she was treated so badly. The recovery of the feminine power that was demonized. So she was treated badly and then she was demonized, much like Lilith as well was demonized. And the speaking about what was silenced. So when these women in these mythological stories, when they spoke of what was silenced, they became a problem for society. So this is not a comfortable North Node. It's a purposeful one. And it has two sides to it, as every planet and every placement has. It has a higher octave and a lower octave. That's one way of looking at it. And then Mercury, if you're still with me, Mercury at 23 degrees of Taurus conjunct the North Node, you can see here with Mars in between it, means, so we're looking at Mercury though, conjunct the North Node means the instrument of the growth is in the mind and the word. So for me, in the sixth house as well, the communication is around the daily matters and being of service in communication, writing, the articulation of what has been felt but not yet spoken. So it's what I've been feeling, and that's taken me a long time. It's taken me to my second Saturn return. We have our first one when we're about 30, and then we have our next one when we're about 60. So there's Saturn. So the next time that goes all the way around the chart, I'll be 90. Hopefully I live to see it. So my North Node is specifically about finding language for the demonized, the suppressed, the territory that has been kept at a mirror's distance because it was considered too dangerous to look at directly. And as I mentioned, the book I'm working on about witness testimony and childhood trauma recovery, about replacing the word survivor, which I find very difficult to, that word personally, when people say, oh, you're so strong, you're a survivor. It's like, to me, it just doesn't work for me. I'm replacing that word. It's a witness. I witnessed. And that's far more powerful to me, is Mercury conjunct the North Node on Algol. It's not a career choice. It's not something that I, chose to do. It is the chart that's speaking here, and that's what it's about. And the Mars at 24 degrees of Taurus conjunct that North Node as well here. So I hope you're looking at your own charts. So what you can do here, where is your Mercury? Where is your Mars? Where is your North Node? You see the symbolism there. This can be a short course for yourself to sit down and work with your own chart and write on your chart. You can write little notes and figure the stuff out for yourself and bring it together. So Mars at 24 degrees of Taurus conjunct the North Node adds the drive. So that gives me the drive, the will, and the courage to act on that direction. And Mars in Taurus is not the fastest, or it's not the fastest or most impulsive Mars. So if you put Mars in Aries, where it's at home, Mars acts in a completely different way. If you put Mars in Pisces, it's another thing. Mars in Aquarius. So each placement where it falls it speaks differently. It's doing something different. It's a different type of action. Mars in Taurus, it's slow and it's deliberate and it's persistent. And I have to say with myself that whilst I've been through quite a few dark nights of the soul in my life, I do feel that for some reason I've been, that I am quite deliberate, and I am very persistent. Like, I'm quietly persistent. I don't even have to say much. This is behind the scenes in my own life about what is important to me. So it's the kind of drive that does not burn out quickly, but does not stop either. So it's like a bull. If you imagine Taurus like a bull in a field, it will chew on some grass and then it will move around, and they're quite big, powerful animals. And then they can charge if they get really annoyed. They can come and get you. So so watch out. So I'm being playful. It's slow, deliberate, persistent, and it's that drive which is slow and deliberate, and the ball that keeps moving. And I think that's given me some ability to have some sort of stamina and keep going even at my low points. So Mars on the North Node conjunct Algol as well. It's the will. Is the will in service of reclamation, because it's in the sixth house as well, very close to my relationship house here, and partnerships of all sorts, and the energy that keeps pressing towards the direction even when it's slow. Keep going, keep going. And that's how I've worked with myself. I've been that way, not intentionally. That's my nature. Even when it was very difficult, even when it requires a lot of patience, that Taurus does demand. And the ruler of Taurus is Venus as well, which is worth noting. All the Venus and Taurus sit hand in hand. And all of this sits on my descendant, the seventh house cusp of relationships and other. So this is what the seventh house is. Sixth house is to do with being of service, our daily routines, our health, and then you've got the seventh house, which is to do with relationships and other. And also, so my direction, although I have moments when I need to be on my own, it's not solitary. It happens through relationship that I learn and that I'm able to share, through the encounter with other. And it's, good, bad, and ugly. It's like all sorts through my life. So through the work I now do with people in the clinic, I'm a peer support worker. In the NHS, I do 1 day a week where I help people who've been through trauma, different types of trauma, war trauma, child sexual abuse trauma. And it's a very interesting thing that I've done for the last couple of years. And it will be in November. And then I will be leaving there because the contract is up, and I will be continuing with my own process. But remember, it's only 8 hours a week, so it's not a big shift in my life. It's just something that I've experienced, and it's been very valuable to me. So it affects my readings, how I understand trauma. It also, not the work I do, but just generally my life in writing, how I write on Substack, how I reach other people through speaking on YouTube and such like. And the seventh house placement of the North Node is 6 moving into 7 almost. It means the soul grows through genuine, honest, reciprocal human connection. So I find that when something's not reciprocal, or it's not, then I do sort of make my decision to move on. And but that happens quite organically as well. It's not always pushed. It's like an awareness, and because it's important through being seen and through seeing through as well, seeing through things. So the yod. So let me see if I can, because this, if you can see, I'm zooming in here, which is very useful. And if you get your own chart, you see over here, you've got all of you can see the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus. It goes all the way down. It's got the ascendant, the little hand here, ascendant. It tells me it's a real shortcut to understanding your chart. Although I prefer looking at the image because I can do that now. But this has taken a long time to learn how to do this. Some people may be very quick at it, but it's taken me persistence. And then you have the transits, which is very good to know as well, where the sun is, what degrees the things are. Remember, this is the 1st of August. So the sun is literally, it would be way up to the south node. It's just going to hit the south node tomorrow. So then it tells you fire, earth, air, and water, things I have in there. And then these are all of the aspects down here. So coming back to this, I have a finger. So these are inconjuncts. These green lines are called inconjuncts. And I checked very closely this chart. It only has one finger. It's called a finger of God, or a yod, Y-O-D. And you can see this goes to Neptune, my moon to Neptune, and my Venus to also Neptune. So this is something that's not quite straightforward to figure out. It's because the planets speak to each other, but they can't really see each other because of where they're at. Like if let's say it's an opposition, you can see a cross. If you go and it's a square, like if it's a square, here's a square here. You see this? They can see, like if I look a square, but with an inconjunct, it's almost like it's at a really different angle. And then the two planets here, the moon and the Venus, they're supporting with a sextile around 60 degrees to Neptune. So that's the apex. So the yod at the finger of God is a configuration that I've had to try and understand. And it's formed by the planets that I've just explained with a sextile and then inconjuncts and an apex. And the apex is here because the sextile is here. You see the blue line, 18 degrees to 17 degrees, and then the inconjunct is about 150 degrees to Neptune there on both sides. So the apex planet is under pressure, which is Neptune, from two very different directions, both at the same time, requiring constant adjustment. And they never really resolve. They don't resolve easily. It's like constant adjustment, constant adjustment. So if I look at my moon, which is my emotional world, and then I look at my creative world and my life, actually my needs, which is Venus, my needs and my also Taurus is involved there, even though it's in Aries. The Venus is connected to Taurus. So you see that my needs and my values, I've had to keep shifting and changing throughout my life. And also in my chart, the yod is formed by Venus, 18 degrees here, which I think I've showed you, but I'm just clarifying. And the apex, also, I've got an inconjunct, which is a bit different. It's not a yod. It's an Aries at the apex, inconjunct Uranus and Pluto up here. So you can see that's an inconjunct. It's working up here to Venus. So this is also, the Neptune is at 20 degrees of Scorpio here. So you can see I've got other inconjuncts going on. And I may think I did find another one, but you have to be pretty precise with these things. So let me explain what each, if I try and explain a little bit. So the two sextile planets, for instance, if I take Uranus, Pluto, midheaven. So Uranus, Pluto, midheaven up here. Let me get this right. You've got Virgo on one arm up here, Virgo. And then you have, actually, I think it does touch in with Persephone. That's what I was thinking here, which again, Persephone is a another mythological thing to do with the underground and also with the Pluto energy and being underground. And it's an unresolvable adjustment as well. You know, they're not resolvable. It's like life work. So let's see. I think with the yod, it could get pretty out of hand here. So I think I'm going to do a separate video on the yod and go to the moon in the 7th and Neptune. So the moon here, moon in the 7th, my moon at 17 degrees is that in the house of relationships also. So I've got my sun and I've got my moon in Gemini. And whilst they look very close, that's 0 degrees and that's 17 degrees. So it's halfway through the chart. And the moon in Gemini is the emotional life that thinks, that processes feelings through language. So that's what I do. I process my feelings through language. And that is also connected with Mercury. So both my sun and moon are connected with Mercury, which is in Taurus. And then also, if we look at the ruler of Taurus, we've got Venus up here. So Venus and Taurus are all connected. All of this is heavily connected. And the process of feeding through language, through the movement between ideas, through restlessness, curious, connective and intelligence. So it's to do with connective intelligence, meaning one thing leads to another. And even as I look at this chart now, like the connections just keep coming. I keep connecting things. And that Gemini brings it to everything. In the 7th house, the moon's need for emotional nourishment and genuine mirroring is specifically located in the territory of relationship of the other. So whilst I've been single for many years, but I have to say that other is very important to me. I have a lot of connections with people that I interact with, even locally. When I go out to the shops, I'm very interested in what people are up to. I'm curious. I'm asking people about themselves, and I'm also sharing bits of my life with different people as I pass through. And if I feel most myself and most emotionally alive through genuine one-to-one connections. So I'm not very good in large groups. Like I'm okay if I'm maybe doing a workshop and I'm teaching something. But if I was going to have to sit down on a table with a group of people, I would get restless. I would get very restless because I would feel like that would be that there's a sort of infiltration with lots of other people around. So if I go on the underground or stuff like that and there's too many people, I do feel I just need my space and it's just too much for me. And I need to, be one-to-one. Having conversations with 3 or 4 people is in personal situations is not so easy for me. I get a bit lost. And then the moon at 17 degrees of Gemini is also in conjunct to that Neptune and the Scorpio in the 12th house. So this brings the moon into the same Neptunian adjustment, which is, difficult because I'm having to adjust because Neptune can get lost and one has to bring it back into spirituality or being over helpful, or which I have been in my past, but I've learned now that I don't need to be like, I remember reading something, I don't have to be like, we can be a lighthouse, we don't need to be a light guard, particularly if we've come from trauma and we've been trying to protect other people as well. We can get too involved in other people's dilemmas, which can be very difficult. So it's good to become a lighthouse, maybe of information or sharing stuff that's useful to people without trying to rescue people. I've had to remove myself from doing things like that. So the moon and that adjustment with Venus is already navigating that yod. So that goes on, it's quite deep work. So the intercepted houses, this is interesting. So you see, I told you about the intercepted houses, if you're still with me. So if you recall, an intercepted house is like, if you see that I've got 27 degrees Scorpio rising, but then in the first house, I also have 30 degrees of Sagittarius, and then I've got 4.5, 5 degrees of Capricorn here going on. And then in my second house, I've got Capricorn, and I've also got Aquarius going on. In my third house of communication, it's Aquarian that's ruling that house. But I've also got Pisces going on in the latter end of it. And then the fourth house, I'm not going to go through them all, but as an example, fourth house, I've got Pisces at 20 degrees beginning. So my fourth house is ruled by Pisces. And then it moves on and goes to 12 degrees of Aries. And then my fifth house is Aries with a little bit of Taurus there. So you can see how that works if you look at your own chart. So the intercepted houses, Cancer and Leo are intercepted in the 8th house as well. So you can see, because the sun is here and the sun is in Leo, Leo and the sun work together. So how am I expressing that sun? That's a thing. I'm expressing it in the 9th house Leo, because you can see that I've got an intercepted seventh, 8th house is intercepted here. But when it falls into the 8th house, then I've got Cancer and I've got Leo. And Capricorn and Aquarius are intercepted as well, which I've just shown you. And they are fully contained within a house without appearing on any house cusp. So if that makes sense to you, they are present in the chart but not immediately accessible. They require more deliberate work to activate, more conscious reaching towards what they contain. So that I've had to do more work in the 8th house, as an example, with the Cancer, which is the moon works with Cancer. They go together. And then we can see that I've got Leo at the tail end of it in the 8th house as well. So Cancer and Leo intercepted in the 8th house, the house of depth, transformation, shared resources, and what lies beneath, means that nurturing, emotional, mothering quality of Cancer and the radiant, creative, heart-centered quality of Leo are both present in my 8th house. And that's my most interior territory, but not immediately visible or accessible. And Jupiter also has been transiting my 8th house for some time. You can see that I've got Jupiter at 3 degrees of Cancer there, and it's almost tipping into the 8th house as well, but it's not in the 8th house, but you can see it's literally 2 degrees. So you could almost say it's tipping in to the last degrees, or the first degrees of Cancer, but the last degrees of the 7th house. If I hope I'm making sense as you're following me. So Jupiter has been transiting that intercepted to 8th house territory across the past year, first through Cancer and now through Leo. And what I've noticed is exactly what in the interception theory would predict. So the depth work has been rich, because I've done a lot of depth work. I've been reading multitude of books over the last couple of years, very deep, intense work around trauma and the Soul by Donald Cowshed. I mean, the list could go on. You know, also on the Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I mean, there's an extended list of what I've been reading. I've been reading on hypnosis. I've been Audible books, podcasts, YouTubes, all sorts of things. So the depth work has been rich. It's been very rich. But it has required deliberate reach. So I've had to learn, what am I reaching for, the ultimate, because I could get lost in knowledge with that 9th house, Leo, and just forever collecting knowledge and then not really doing anything with it. So the gift of Cancer and Leo in the 8th do not simply arrive. They've got to be claimed. So it's almost like at the end of that, it's like I'm okay to be seen. I mean, I know you can't see me right now, but I'm not afraid. I don't need to hide anymore what I have to say in my life. So, and then Capricorn, Aquarius are intercepted. This is an example in the Capricorn here in my second house of worth and resources. So the house directly opposite the 8th house mirrors it, and the capacity for the Capricornian self-authority. The ruler is Saturn. So Capricorn and Saturn work together. And Aquarian collective intelligence, in the territory of self-worth and value is present but requires the same deliberate activation. So I have to activate that. It's not just being activated on its own. And the worthlessness wound that Chiron in Taurus is working through collectively. So, where we've been feeling worthless. So you can see Chiron here has moved into Taurus. This is collective. These transit on the outside, the little K there. And this is working on our worth, what we believe about ourselves, and it's working on it's a personal thing. And for those of us with the second house carrying hidden signs that need to be reached for consciously, so we help ourselves. The more conscious we become, the easier it is to help ourselves. We know what to do. And really what this chart is saying as a total is that when I look at it, then I look at it as a coherent story. What I see is that if I look at the fourth house Piscean foundation of the wound and compassion, the place where the solid ground dissolved early in my life, and where Saturn and Chiron together describe both the wound and the father figure and the healing, that took me so many years to begin to work on and even understand and try to help myself. And the healing for me has come through really sharing knowledge with other people about these particular types of wounds, so that I can feel that I'm helping others. It's been part of my, but also becoming lovely to myself. So the Venus Aries, being able to be creative and do my art, and also speaking up, which is the Lilith in the third house, and also publishing as well. Leo, letting people see that part of me that I put in hiding for a long time, where I wasn't allowed to speak the truth, until I got to a point as a young woman where I did. So we've also got the Scorpio ascendant that carries depth of the outward presentation. But what I've been trying to learn to do is step into my North Node, because that's more about beauty and Venus and Venetian. Whereas Scorpio, I would say that I'm not so hot on the idea of past lives personally. Some people are. For some people, to think that, people say, oh, will you choose your parents? Well, I don't think, I don't know that to be true. And I'm not going to be dogmatic about it if people want to believe that that's the case. But I think it's far more complex than we know. And I think that can be very harmful to people that have been through trauma at the hands of their parental roles that they've landed in this lifetime. So we have to be mindful that just work with people when you're looking at charts and their beliefs. You don't have to start telling them what you believe or don't believe. For instance, I'm having this conversation now, but I know that we have to be mindful when we're helping other people. So also that Scorpio, the outward presentation, the person who sees beneath the surface. So that's not going to ever leave me, because the surface was, what was going on was never quite safe enough to trust. So whether I naturally have an instinct to err on the side of, I'm not sure about somebody until I feel certain that there's some safety there. So a North Node on Algol conjunct Mercury and Mars on the descendant, which I was telling you about here. The evolutionary direction is woven together with the demonized feminine power and the instruments of language and will. So I've got the language and I have the will, and it's taken me a long time to get to that language, and that's taken years of reading and studying in my own time. I'm trying to work out, and astrology was a great part of that for me. Astrology actually helped me to understand my own psychology and to see my path. It wasn't clear at the beginning, but as I worked through, I was beginning to understand something about myself. And then we've got the Yod with the Venus in Aries at the apex, pulled between the Pluto as well and the Uranian public vocation, Plutonic vocation in Virgo. I'm investigating things and I'm sharing things and putting things in what I believe to be order, as things that I feel that are, cutting out things that I don't feel are useful when it comes to certain types of knowledge through lived experience. That's my view. So through lived experience. And then the midheaven, I've got a 20-degree midheaven in Virgo, and that's the midheaven and the dissolving spiritual interior. That's a sextile, isn't it? To, you can see here, to the Neptune here, 60 degrees, and the dissolving the spiritual interior of Neptune in the 12th, and a moon in the 7th in a permanent inconjunct adjustment. So I've had to always been adjusting myself, always adjusting myself. It's been a lot of hard work, but I'm more relaxed about it now because I understand myself better. So the story of the chart is telling is not a comfortable one, and it's not, for many people, it's not comfortable. This is just the way that it is for many of us, not all of us, but many of us, and at different times in our lives. But it's a purposeful one, and the wound is the foundation, becomes the compassion that makes the work possible. So the work is possible because I understand something. And I've now learned at this point in my life to be regulated in my expression as well, and to, you know, taking steps when I need to, or making sure I'm looking after myself, which is very useful with all of that sixth house stuff in Taurus, what my needs are, meeting my needs. And the Scorpio depth becomes the capacity to go where others will not. I'm not talking, there are others that will go there. I'm not saying not any other. I keep the ego out of it. So I'm sure if you look at your own chart and you have similar stuff, you'll get the gist of it. So that North Node on Algol becomes a commitment to speak what has been severed and suppressed. And that's going on in society. A lot of people are talking about what has been severed and suppressed. So the yod becomes the vocation, the calling that cannot be bypassed. So it's this lifetime, I cannot bypass that. And that keeps pressing its finger. It's like somebody pointing their finger at you, saying, come on now, you can do this, towards the question of genuine worth and genuine love. And the moon in 7th, I'm not talking about bypassing here. This is genuine love of the self and the genuine love of humanity, but also being discerning as well. This is not about being airy fairy stuff at all. And the moon in 7 adjusting forever the Neptunian interior, because that interior world of the Neptune can be very soft and very vulnerable. Pisces. So, and then the quality of attention that others feel when they sit with me. So I do tend to be in one-to-one. I pay attention to people and the sense of being genuinely received at a level that goes beyond surface. So I've not always I've had to grow into that because I was so dysregulated at some point, in particularly 2017, around my own traumatic experiences, when it really, I sort of began to leave dissociation, because I was drinking quite heavily wine every day up until 2012. So I've not had any alcohol since then. I decided to stop and I didn't ever start again. And the sense of, that I was able to receive myself then, and I was able to then work through my own regulations, getting regulated within myself, on my emotions. But there was a lot of trial and error around that. And at the moment, I feel quite regulated, very Taurian, sort of North Node stuff. I know when I need a walk in the park, or when I need to sit and do some art, or whether I just need quiet. And I don't have to look at my phone, and I take care of myself as well, that on the physical level. So the sense of being genuinely received at a level that goes beyond the surface is very important to me. And this is, this is what I'm here for now, to do this work and enjoy what I can of my life. And it took me a long time to be able to say that without immediately qualifying it, because I used to qualify my needs all the time. And I don't have to qualify my needs. I need this because I don't have to do that anymore. I need what I need, and I love and value myself, and I can take care of myself. So the chart is very clear to me with what I see here. There's a lot more to it, but I'll go into the yods and the midpoints in my next video. I'm going to be doing more collective stuff as we go through the upcoming new moons and full moons. But you can check out my lunar eclipse one that I did, which is coming up. I think it's the 28th or 29th. I haven't got it in front of me. The lunar eclipse. I hope you enjoyed that. And let me know a bit about your chart as well, if you have listened all the way through. Did you get any light bulb moments about your own chart and what you think of your own journey and what your evolutionary process is for your soul? let me know. Thanks for listening.